Larry Kudlow, now economic advisor to the White House. What kind of truth will he be speaking to power about the dollar? What does this mean for the dollar? Because global investors, no matter where they're exposed, will be wanting to know what the dollar does from here. Do you see, if we do see rising protectionism, and that is still a question, but if we do see that, does that play out as a dollar negative, or is it, we talked about how it's more complicated than that perhaps in the last hour?
It is, and actually we are slightly more cautious on the dollar anyway, because a lot of the fiscal spending and the pressure that puts on the US budget. So we would be slightly in the more bearish camp on the dollar anyway, and that obviously lends support to US equity markets, whilst being a bit of a headwind for European markets. So it could play out in the dollar, but I think there are various factors that play into the dollar at the moment, the Fed being another, of course, as well as that growth picture.
Matt?
What do you expect from European markets in that case? I mean, if the U.S. dollar is weaker, or the euro is stronger, let's say, that's a problem for our exporters. On the other hand, that's good for investors. If U.S. investors want to have the currency tailwind with them, they'll invest in EU stocks.
Absolutely, and we've seen it comes down to relative earnings momentum, and that's certainly been in favour of the US because of the weaker dollar so far, as well as because of the large tax reform package that we've had, both in terms of tax cuts and repatriation of foreign earnings. So our forecast for euro dollar is 130, so we do see the euro strengthening more from here, and how we articulate that in terms of our investment recommendations is to have a preference for France over Germany, because we think the stronger euro obviously is going to impact the export sector more, and the DAX feeds into that in a more material way than the CAC 40 does.
The DAX has been hit fairly hard. You see that as something that can continue with the stronger euro, and if so, how do you expect Germany to react?
I think when we look at Europe, we're looking at it in aggregate. As I mentioned, the CAC is our preferred region in Europe, but we still see a strong earnings picture for Europe across the board. Part of that is because of the cyclical exposure that Europe has. When you look at exposures to mining, basic resources, oil and gas, industrials, a lot of that is driving the earnings growth that we enjoyed in Europe in 2017 and that we expect will continue in 2018. So I don't think what's going on a trade front, based on what we know at the moment, is something that's going to materially derail the European earnings piece.